Greetings, hello everyone and welcome to the next guide from Volk. Today we will talk about the most broken class in the game. Game update 3.2.1 landed a few days ago on the live servers and we're all already moaning, complaining and crying about the changes brought to our favorite class Sentinel, more specifically Watchman, and Marauder Annihilation. There will be majorly three formed parts of the video today. First we will talk about the changes, because to understand the reason for a guide we need first to explain why and what has happened, so a new guide is needed. Second, we will go through the gearing process. What gear is needed, where, how and why. This includes the utility section in the discipline window, of course. Third, we will talk about personal opinions, raging, expectations, predictions and all of that good stuff that doesn't fit really into a guide, but I really want to express my personal opinion. I want to share with you what I thought about the patch, how I felt when I first read about it, how I feel today after I had a chance to play. If there are corrections in the near or distant future, I will post edits, or maybe I will make a new guide if things go totally wrong, or if BioWare realizes that they've made a few very important and big mistakes and they correct it. Here comes the intro, and after that we begin the real part of the video. First, we are taking a look at what has changed. Today I've brought my Marauder just so I can stare at my lovely wings. No, I'm not showing off, because everybody and their dog have the wings of the Architect already, if they wanted to have that. And because I wanted to take turns in my guides, once for the Sentinel terms and Sentinel display, once for the Marauder. Let's see what has changed with the latest patch. For the Sith Marauder, the major changes. Relentless is now a masterful utility. Cloak of Annihilation is now a heroic utility. Relentless has been redesigned. Predation no longer requires or consumes fury, but will go on cooldown for 30 seconds when activated. This is the passive utility Relentless, which was moved to the masterful as we've just heard. It is a very good boost for some fights and obviously a very good update and a change towards PvP players in PvP environments. The developers have removed the defensive forms utility, which was kind of a good move if you ask me personally. New skillful utility has appeared to replace obviously the missing defensive form. It's called Brazen. Brazen increases your damage reduction by 2% and you build 2 fury when attacked. This fury building effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds, just as displayed on the tooltip here. Defensive roll now additionally increases internal and elemental damage reduction by 5%. Defensive roll is a masterful passive utility and it is a must. It has usually always been a must, but right now an extra defensive boost has been added. This used to be kind of a part of the remove defensive forms utility, and it is now a part of the defensive roll. Phantom now additionally increases your movement speed by 15%. Phantom is another masterful utility. Undying now additionally increases the duration of Undying Rage by 2 seconds. And Undying is a heroic utility. Very good and useful utility for some bosses and especially for PvP. Pretty much a must in my personal opinion. Just a very quick comparison. For the Jedi Knight 3, Relentless in the Republic version is called Ardor. The effect is absolutely the same. Cloak of Annihilation is the same as the Jedi Promulgator. And the defensive forms kept its old name, but it's now a non-existing ability anymore. The new skillful utility for the Republic side, in this slot, instead of Brazen, it's called Stoic. Again, the effect is absolutely the same. Defensive row has kept its name on the Republic side as well. And Phantom for the Jedi Knight Sentinel is called Force Fade. The last one that I want to mention is Enduring, which is the version of Undying for the Republic players. Moving on to the specific changes regarding Annihilation and Watchman trees. This is the dot spec for the Sentinel. Just like before, it still lacks any kind of burst, but due to some changes, there is a very minor boost to the quicker damage dealing. It can't be called a burst, but it is an improvement, and everything BioWare did with this patch is absolutely aimed at PvP. We will talk about that in the end of the video, where I will share my personal opinion. The first, and I consider most important changes: Rupture now deals its elemental damage over 6 seconds, down from 12 seconds, and Force Rend causes targets to bleed for internal damage over 15 seconds. It used to be 18 seconds. This is my Annihilation tree. Please keep in mind that my gear, my HP, and everything you see on my Marauder has not been optimized. For the gearing part of the video, I will switch to my Sentinel and I will show you the best gear available to me at this point of creating the video. The changes about Annihilation and Watchman, respectively. Rupture, which I consider to be the biggest change, the biggest gameplay impact, not exactly the biggest change. Rupture now deals its internal damage over 6 seconds, down from 12 seconds, and Force Rend causes targets to bleed for internal damage for 15 seconds, down from 18. Rupture is one of the most spammed abilities. We all complained that it used to be 6 seconds before Shadow of Revan expansion. They made it 12-second duration, which ruined the fun, well, the relatively fun rotation for the Sentinel and Marauder. Now they're bringing it back to 6 seconds and we're complaining again. More on that later. Force Rend is the long dot that nobody ever liked at the launch of 3.0. Instead of 18 seconds, it deals a little bit less damage according to the notes from the patch, and it only lasts for 15 seconds. I haven't done a precise calculation, so I can't say how much the damage is different compared to before, but it's not that very important. The important thing is the duration has changed. We have to spam Rupture a lot now and we have to monitor it very closely, and Force Rend is pretty much messing up very seriously with any form of a strict rotation. The internal cooldown of Hemorrhage's Rage regeneration has been reduced to 1 second, down from 4 seconds. Another very important change. Hemorrhage is a passive ability that we gain at level 40, and it will help us generate more rage, possibly depending on our luck. The internal cooldown of Bloodlust's Rage regeneration has been reduced to 3 seconds, down from 4 seconds. And here is the description. Your direct damage attacks that critically hit a bleeding target build 1 rage. This effect cannot occur more than once every 3 seconds, which used to be 4. In addition, Annihilate makes its target assailable for 45 seconds. Assailable targets take 7% more elemental and internal damage. This part of the description has not changed. It's the first one that has building rage every 3 seconds instead of 4, which is another help to fight against the rage starvation. Swift Demise is a passive gained at level 59. It's one of the most important abilities for endgame Annihilation players. It now builds up to maximum of 2 stacks instead of 3. Because there has been a change to Force Rend, it costs 2 rage now instead of 3. This is another reason why Force Rend totally breaks any strict rotation for the Annihilation players. The passive Hungering has been redesigned. Your Rupture, Deadly Saber and Force Rend bleeds heal you for 15% of the damage they are dealing. Yet another huge change and improvement for PvP players. Absolutely no impact on the PvE side because Sentinels and Marauders there rely on their healers in team play. Very good, positive and important change is the one made to Dual Saber Throw. Weapon Masters and Challengers critical bonus set can now be additionally triggered by Dual Saber Throw. It is the 6-piece set bonus, which used to previously be only affected by Ravage. You should be using a lot more Dual Saber Throw, just like the developers made a huge mistake telling people that Dual Saber Throw is supposed to be a situational skill. No. And now adding a specific buff to it makes it a very important skill within the priority system. A quick couple notes for those who may not know. Rupture for the Republic side is called Cauterize, and Force Rend has the name of Force Melt. These are the same abilities, they've gone through the same changes, I'm just mentioning the names. You may be confused because Vulk and Skork look the same, but I have switched to my Sentinel. If you can't tell by the look and the design of my character's outfits, you should look at the skills. We are going to talk a little bit about gearing, and after that we will switch back to the Marauder and use the Marauder terms about priority system and the right side of the tree, because I promised you guys this will be mostly focusing on the Marauder's terms. When it comes to gearing, again, just like before, my first priority, and I believe your first priority, should be getting the accuracy as close as 100 without going above. Now this 0.14% above the 100 is fine, I'm not wasting. The way to achieve that is absolutely up to you and whatever you have available. You could use accuracy in your implants and earpieces if you prefer, if you have earlier and easier access to them. You can use all enhancements for that if you prefer that way. You could and you probably should consider also using, where is it? Accuracy augments. You see, I'm using one because I don't have the perfect most balanced system with only 198s yet. I'm still missing a few pieces, and that's why I have to use one augment to bring my accuracy to 100. Critical chance, I believe, to be even more important in gameplay. Bear in mind, this is not gearing and build up for bashing the dummy, it's about gameplay. Therefore, I would recommend higher crit chance, not as high as the sky goes, but my personal preferences go to the number you see, about 24%, maybe even up to 25%, depend on your playstyle and on your personal good feeling. Why do you need the higher percentage? Again, we're going to this passive utility, which explains that the more we crit with the burns, the better heals we will receive. The next step would be critical multiplier. It's absolutely entirely up to you. As long as you bring it, depending on your gear, above 70%, I think you should be satisfied. The better gear you have, the higher the percentage goes. In terms of the other stats, I'm still using strength augments. I'm tired of explaining that question. It has been a part of every one of my guides. It does not matter which augments you will be using, whether you go for strength and endurance or power and endurance. The difference has been proven to be so small and insignificant that it absolutely doesn't matter. If you want to achieve the 5 or 10 DPS better result on the dummy and brag about that on forums or on some other places, go for power because it technically has a slight advantage. However, depending on your availability, crafting skills, or money or resources or something else, pick the augments that you prefer. The relics have always been the same since, well, forever. Both of them are the proc relics, one for the primary stat and one for the power stat. Now, I'm not exactly sure if by the time you're watching the video the old bugs still exist. You will see that I'm using the Revenite relics, which means I'm not benefiting from the buff, from the bug. The bug was related to one of the relics, and if I'm not mistaken, it's the primary stat one. It procs twice, depending on separately on your heals and on your DPS. Since I'm not benefiting from this, there is no point considering and explaining any more about it. This is about the gearing. It doesn't matter where and how you obtain them. Any mod that has better stats than your previous one is an upgrade. Don't be afraid to use the lettered mods. If they bring you better points, slot them for 1 day, for 2 days, for 1 week. As long as you benefit from those, don't be afraid to use them. Nobody would blame you that you're using a lettered mod. If they do, they're noobs. Look at that. Some guy just ruined my video. Hello guy, if you watched the video. Welcome back to the beautiful Skorks and his wings on his back. It is time to say a few words about utilities. How would you arrange them is entirely up to you. I will show you one of the combinations that I have been using, and it's primarily built towards PvE DPS. This is one of the possible builds that I have been using lately. There are a lot of variations depending on what you do, and I will go now and then tell you guys why exactly I've picked this. Now, Cloak of Carnage is increasing damage dealt by Cloak of Pain by 15%, and it's increasing its duration. Cloak of Pain is one of the most important both DPS and defensive abilities. You know it to be on a fairly short cooldown, and with its maximum duration up to 30 seconds, it's really useful. The Cloak of Rage is the second passive from the first tier that I'm using. While Cloak of Pain is active, it generates 1 rage whenever you are attacked. This effect cannot occur more than once every 2 seconds. Cloak of Pain and Cloak of Carnage have always been going very nice and well together because they both benefit the same passive, defensive and offensive ability. Now bear in mind that in some boss encounters you are not taking a lot of damage, so you might not see any noticeable and real DPS improvement, but it's still there, believe me. Brazen is the new passive, and as mentioned before, it increases our damage reduction by 2% and we build 2 Fury when attacked. The Fury building effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds, which is 1 global cooldown in the game, for those of you who didn't know that fact. There are other options, but I'll talk more about them later. Defensive Row on the Masterful tier is a must in my opinion. Reduces damage taken from AoE by 30% and increases internal and elemental damage reduction by 5%. The second part of the description is the new bonus, which was added with the last patch 3.2. A must-have useful utility for every both PvP and PvE environment. The second Masterful is totally optional depending on what you do, and just for this example I've chosen Phantom, which increases movement speed by 15%. Every melee needs to move quicker and it's a very good boost. It's increasing the movement speed by 50% and the movement speed bonus of Force Camouflage by extra 20%. Additionally, increases the duration of Force Camouflage by 2 seconds. Force Camouflage is extremely useful in many cases in both PvE and PvP. In the Heroic, I've picked Brooding because as much as I don't like this ability, I'm actually struggling to pick a must-have ability from the Heroic tier on the Marauder side. This one reduces the cooldown of Intimidating Roar by 15 seconds. About Intimidating Roar, nobody cares in PvE, it's a pure PvP ability. But the second part is most important for some fights. You're building 30 Fury over the course of using Channel Hatred, and this effect cannot occur more often than every 30 seconds. Channel Hatred, everybody knows, is the basic channeling ability for the Marauder, and building 30 Fury before you start the fight gives you another extra option how to use those 30 stacks of Fury. Now let's talk about other options. First, about PvE, because the guide is obviously mostly aimed at PvE players. On the skillful side, the one thing we have to pick is probably Path Carver. Depending on the boss environment, whether you're doing trash or not, Sweeping Slash deals 25% more damage. Combined with the fact that something I've missed in the very beginning, Smash has been changed a little bit. Hemorrhaging Smash has been redesigned, reduces the cooldown of Smash by 9 seconds and the rage it consumes by 1 point. In addition, Smash deals 30% more damage and spreads your Rupture and Force Rend, the 2 major bleeds in the game, to the target it hits if it hits a target that is already affected by those bleeds. Because I feel that sentence might be a little bit too long, I want to explain. First, you dot your target with Rupture and Rend. You don't have to dot it with Deadly Saber because anyway it's a very quick dot. But you target something that will not die in 2 global cooldowns. Rupture, Force Rend, and then you smash it. Where the hell is my smash? That's that one. When you smash it, first smash deals more damage and it spreads the dot. Combining the smash and dot spreading with the Sweeping Slash, the frontal AoE boost, because it will deal 25% more damage, this makes the Annihilation AoE a lot better whenever and wherever it is needed. For the Masterful tier, there are quite a few options for PvE available. We don't care about Snare, obviously. Relentless is very useful but not always needed. It makes predation not dependent on the Fury, which means I can use the 30 stacks of Fury on Berserk all the time and everywhere. Or of course Bloodthirst. Predation will be just on static 30-second cooldown. It is a very useful buff, for example, for The Underbugger, whose name is actually Underlurker, the third boss in Temple of Sacrifice, specifically in hard mode where you have that annoying near root snare or slow. The other passive utilities in the Masterful skill, in the Masterful tier utility, I believe to be a little bit for the PvP players, so we will not talk about them. Unbound in the heroic utility section is a very useful ability, and when predation is applied or refreshed, it purges moving and parrying effects. Additionally, the movement speed bonus of predation is increased by another 30%, another boost to predation to be combined with this utility and or this utility depending on your points available and what you're doing, could be providing very good results. Expunging Camouflage has always been a good but very situational depending on what you're doing. It gives the bonus, the ability for Force Camouflage to remove all the cleansable effects when it's activated. If you didn't know, Force Camouflage is the stealth ability. And here is yet another boost for Cloak of Pain. Cloak of Pain, remember, it was boosted here and here. Cloak of Annihilation. Each use of Assault, Battering Assault and Crippling Slash reduces the active cooldown of Cloak of Pain by 3 seconds. Remember, Cloak of Pain is both DPS and defensive boost. We don't care from the PvE side of the game for Inescapable, but it is a very good utility for PvP players. Blood Ward. Getting attacked by Saber Ward is active, heals you for 3% of your maximum health. This effect cannot occur more than once every second. Now, this is a very good boost, but again, only aimed at PvP players. In PvE, unfortunately, Saber Ward, we know that is on a very long cooldown, and it makes it usable once, maybe twice, God forbid 3 times in some very long fights, such as Styrak, for example. Or pretty much all of the final boss encounters in most operations. This Undying passive ability has been slightly redesigned, as we've mentioned before, and it is very useful for some situational moments, such as when the Sentinel or Marauder is supposed to take the yellow beam, which name I forgot, from Master in the Master and Blaster encounter, the 4th boss in the Ravagers operation, hard mode of course. It increases your Undying Rage by 2 seconds, making it 6 seconds total duration, allowing you to absorb all the damage incoming from that beam, because you know the Master is beaming you and stacking you up. The later stacks deal a lot of damage and they can pretty much one-shot you. This is everything I could and wanted to say about the gearing up and the utility section. Let's talk a little bit about rotation, and because I want to help you guys forget the word rotation, we will talk about priorities from now on. The changes to the duration of the 2 main dots, Rupture and Force Rend, or Cauterize and Force Melt for the Sentinel, are making the new Annihilation since patch 3.2.1 very situational, very personal oriented, and most of it based on priorities, not on rotations. Why? Because the basic cooldown of Annihilate has always been the same and it hasn't changed. Now don't mind that my cooldown says 11.4, it's because of the huge insane amount of alacrity I have on this character. It's again because I haven't optimized his gear. You see he's only level 59, I haven't really played him since 3.0. Back on the point, Annihilate is stacking up a very nice and useful buff called Swift Demise. Please forgive me for not remembering it on the Empire side. And it stacks twice now, making it again Force Rend free. You can open with the same opener for the first 30-ish seconds if you wish. Well, not for the first 30 seconds, because now we have to reapply Rupture every 6 seconds. Let's talk about the main priority. Dots are the biggest damage supplier to the Annihilation and Watchman players. They provide more than 40%, the dots alone I mean, more than 40% of your total damage, whether you're doing dummy parses or boss environments, depending if you spread the dots on multiple targets. Sometimes it could result for even better and bigger percentage. But it's very important to monitor the buffs, use the highlight system the game provides since 3.0, and refresh and replace the dots exactly when they finish. Don't overwrite them, because you're losing both resource, rage or focus, and you're losing DPS therefore. If you would like to have some kind of a straight opener, I would recommend you, just like I did in the previous guide, open up with charge, and then you follow the normal abilities, battering assault, the 2 dots, rupture and force rend. Yes, force rend is not free for the first hit, and then after that you go annihilate, and then go on. Don't forget that the 3rd dot coming from Deadly Saber is very closely related to Berserk. It's a good challenge to try and use the 30 stacks from Berserk, from Rage, convert them into Berserk, when Deadly Saber is on 2 stacks, or preferably just after you apply the 3rd stack. This will give you very good result, because if you don't know, in Geo form there is the Berserk ability increases the critical chance of your bleed attacks by 100%, making the next 6 bleeds 100% critical, and that's a huge improvement. And with Hemorrhage, you will get a very nice result and a very good chance, depending on your crit. That's why I suggest you stacking up crit. You will get a very nice return for your resource builders. You will not have to spam the crazy assault more than once every now and then. This is the optimal priority system, or okay, if you prefer, rotation. Use less assault, as less as possible. In this last part of this video, I would like to share with you my personal opinion on these changes. Yes, just like everybody else, I was kind of unhappy when BioWare introduced their plans like a couple months ago for making these huge changes in the middle of nowhere, because patch 3.2.1 is a small middle in between patch. It shouldn't have been a class balancing, but for some reason they have decided to make it such. And I'm showing you guys here a cool post. Most of you probably have seen it, but if you haven't, you should read it, because the developers made an attempt to explain what exactly they have changed and why. Let's see, a little bit of quoting. The reason for removing defensive forms. We understand that many of you have been calling for defensive forms to be made baseline, because if you remember, base form used to give different kind of defensive buffs depending on your discipline. So you get one kind of defensive boost for Annihilation, second one for Carnage, third one for Fury. We need to maintain choice within utility system. The 3 previously form restricted effects tied to the original defensive forms, damage reduction, internal and elemental damage reduction, and movement speed bonus, are all great defensive and utility skills that should be player driven options in the utility system. While the Fury centering generation applied by defensive forms and the new Brazen Stoic improves the DPS and defensive output of Marauder and Sentinels who are being actively attacked, it does nothing for those who are avoiding damage or attention and allowing their team companions to draw the target's ire. Well, professionally said BioWare, pretty much. Very good choice, splitting up the defensive forms into a few other defensive abilities. Defensive utilities. I love the change to defensive row. It's one of the best changes when it comes to surviving. The Marauder and Sentinel do strive and do struggle a lot in both PvP and PvE. In PvP, because they are melee and they're always being CC'd and they're pretty much the primary target. And they are also the most annoying players usually. I know that from personal experience. On PvE side, it's because absolutely everything since 3.0 and before that has been extremely unfriendly to melees. Combining that with the FPS issues and the horrible engine the game has, melee have really big struggle. Very fresh example is the last boss implemented, the world boss not so much, but the instance boss on Ziost, the Colossal Monolith. Wow, you just enter there and you're immediately dropping your FPS by at least a half before you even start the fight. God forbid on 16-man, I haven't tried that. We will be actually trying that tomorrow for the first time, 16-man Colossal Monolith. I hope it will be easier, but I can't believe how exactly will I be recording this and being able to play it with more than 15 FPS. Let me be wrong, please. Let the FPS be good. Like everybody else, I just gotten used to Rupture. I like the 12-second cooldown before I managed to remember the priorities, and if you must, rotations for each boss where I was using Annihilation and Watchman. Now, with this shorter duration, it will do the same damage twice quicker, but the problem is that the downtimes for the bosses are the same, and of course, just like everybody else, I will have to relearn and readjust those timers to the bosses and the ways I am performing. You had a chance to see and hear some of my thoughts on my previous video, which was just like every time before I make a guide, I release a gameplay test and analysis video. And in this case, it was 30-something minute long, including 3 bosses from the Ravager's operation in hard mode. Changing the duration of Force Rend to 15 seconds makes the rotation absolutely non-existent. How many times have I said that throughout the guide today? Because Annihilate reduces the rage cost of Force Rend, further into the fight you will see that Force Rend will become available again, and it will be highlighted very easily to spot on your toolbar way before the cooldown, the duration of the buff on your target has expired. It doesn't mean you have to refresh it. No, absolutely not. Do other skills depending on what you have available, depending on your target's HP. Is it one target? Is it multiple targets? Spread the dots and everything like that. Just bear in mind, it's never a good idea to replace a dot before it has finished its duration, or if you want to make sure, depending on your latency in the game, your ping, if you have, for example, higher than 150 or maybe even higher than 200, it's not a bad idea to replace your dots one global cooldown sooner. I mean, maybe you will lose the last tick, but it's better than leaving it go off. Again, in real boss environments, it's very commonly seen and expected that you would not be able to keep the dots all the time on your primary target or on the other targets. It's not all about keeping the dot, it's about surviving, it's about keeping relatively high and good enough DPS, but not preventing your other teammates to do their jobs. This means if you have to move away and let the dots run out, you do that. If you don't have to, keep your stacks up, build your stacks up in the downtimes, and this helps you keep the DPS. It may not be important right now for whatever you are doing, but in the future, for the next year, whether it's hard mode or nightmare mode, believe me, it will become important that you keep your stacks and you don't let all of your buffs and procs run out. It's very important to use procs on dual saber throw. It's very important to use the procs on Rupture, or on Force Rend or Force Melt for the Sentinel. Never ever use Force Rend without the proc, unless it's a very extreme situation and you actually want to apply it on a second extra target that you're not hitting actively at the moment. A good example of that would be Unit 1 and Unit 2, the second boss encounter, SWAT Squadron in Temple of Sacrifice. You might want to focus on one of them depending on which one is available and keep the dot on the other one. The example I have in my mind is you're hitting Unit 1, but you want to keep the dots on Unit 2. Why not? It's a 15-second dot, and you can freely apply it to a strong target that you will not kill before, otherwise your dot will be pointless. Remember, Force Rend is not an exactly huge hitting dot. For 15 seconds, it's dealing averagely, well, for my gear, less than 6,000. Obviously it will be higher on Vulk and even higher on people who have the main hands and better gear than Vulk. But for 15 seconds this is absolutely not a huge hitter. The biggest hitter is still Annihilate, and it's very likely in your log analysis, you will see that Annihilate takes a huge priority and it might actually appear as the biggest hitting ability. One thing I've noticed while testing the new changes both on PTS and here now on the live servers, it seems somehow that I have increased just a little tiny bit the APM. I would consider the average APM attacks per minute for the Sentinel Annihilation discipline to be about 45, but depending on whether you're bashing the dummy and whether you're using extra skills, because you might hit the single target boss but you keep using Cloak of Pain, Saber Ward, Force Camouflage and other abilities that still count and contribute towards the APM, but you would not use them and they would not benefit you if you're bashing the dummy. So your APM could be different on the dummy and in a real boss encounter, regardless of the fact that you're hitting one target all the time. Just keep in mind, your APM should be above 45 on the dummy. If it drops below 45, consider changing, let's see if I can find it, this in controls, combat, ability, action queue window. Depending on your personal preferences, you might want to bring that lower or higher. Right now you see I'm on the highest one for whatever reason, I just find it suitable. I changed that yesterday because I played on a server with higher latency. Yes, I've moved to another server with a brand new character. If you've missed that, make sure to catch up on the YouTube releases following the live shows. This was the guide for today. I'm sure there have been things that I forgot to mention, probably not many, and I'm sure that some of you will help me and list them in the comments. If you found this guide useful, remember to subscribe, share, favorite, like and all these good things that help me a lot and my videos to be reaching more people and bigger audience. If you would like to support me, visit my Patreon page and contribute monthly with a couple bucks. It is very greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for watching and hopefully enjoying my video. I really believe and keep my hopes up that this guide was again useful to you, just like all of my older and previous guides. I will see you with the next Star Wars The Old Republic video. Bye bye. My Patreon campaign is an absolutely voluntary and optional way for you guys to support and back me up. Depending on your contribution, I have a special reward for you. Early access to videos, behind the scenes materials and special in-game items. Thank you for considering becoming my patron. Remember, you can find me also on Twitch, Twitter and Facebook. For my non-Star Wars activities, I invite you to subscribe to my second YouTube channel.